Welcome to the Expert Network Team podcast,
where our goal is to inform and educate our listeners on matters related to finance, legal, insurance, accounting, and other interests that are of personal and business nature.
We hope you will find our content useful as well as entertaining. The Expert Network Team consists of Karl Frank of A&I Financial, Mike Miller of Miller and Associates CPAs, Jeff Cromendike of Security First Insurance Agency, and I'm Nathan Merrill. I'm an attorney at Goodspeed Merrill.
Together, our independent team combines our expertise to provide you insights and solutions, some straightforward, some profound, for real-life opportunities we see on a daily basis. We hope you enjoy the information contained in today's podcast and find it useful. If you'd like to learn more or desire to meet with any of the Expert Network team members in person, you can contact us at info@expertnetworkteam.com. That's info@expertnetworkteam.com.
We encourage you to take advantage of a free consultation with any of our team members. Just mention this podcast when you schedule your appointment.
Now on to today's podcast.
I'm Karl Frank, and I'm here with Karan Safran and Jeff Cromendike. Our topic today is protecting your business while working remotely. Karen's an attorney with Goodspeed Merrill and a partner with Nate Merrill, who is a common contributor to our podcast and part of the expert team. Let me give you an overview of the situation. We are a little bit more than halfway, 6 months, half of a year into the COVID pandemic and the stay-at-home rules, and we're getting used to working remotely. However, this brave new world has exposed businesses to additional risks. Our tech and our employees are at risk from malware attacks, phishing, smishing, I can't wait to find out what that means, and other scams. We're going to discuss a few common sense basic approaches to help protect your business today, and I know you're going to enjoy it. This will likely take 2 podcasts because we've got so much to say.
Yeah. Karan, thanks for being here. It's really great to have you. I'm just looking through your outline, and I'm thinking, 2 at least.
Right.
And being in the risk management business and risk transfer business, my goodness, we would much rather have our listeners be prepared before a loss occurs than having to worry about it after, or even worrying about, again, how we're going to pay for these kind of things. So, Karan, thanks for being here. This is amazing. I've just been paging through this outline for the last 2 minutes, and I'm like, okay, this gal knows what she's going to be talking about here. So fantastic. Welcome and welcome to the podcast.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I'm kind of excited to talk about this. The outline may look thorough, but I think it's really just sort of barely scratched the surface. There is so much out there, which is kind of scary, how easily we can all be attacked. And really the idea is let's see what common sense approaches we can find, and let's try to be a little bit proactive, because really it's not a matter of if we're attacked, it's when. And we want to be in the best position that we can be just to kind of handle it and don't panic when that does happen.
Yeah. Karl, you kind of set it up very nicely, but I would love to get Karen's perspective on the last 6 months and maybe really what has been happening. I don't know if you've got any statistics in the industry or anything like that would say, hey, look, we sent everybody home 6 months ago, and now as a result, there's been an uptick in this, and that. I'm assuming you probably have some of that information, but just bring us into the room today with regards to now looking back 6 months ago, had we known this, what could we have done, things like that. But what makes this topic so important right now?
Well, what's funny thinking about it is, so 6 months ago we were sent home for 2 weeks. Yep. I think everybody thought 2 weeks, maybe 30 days, and then we'd be all back to normal and it would be all well and good. So the first hurdle that we all had to get over is, oh my God, we're working remotely. What does that mean? I don't have statistics at my fingertips. I mostly have anecdotal evidence. I can say, for our firm, we went remote. We went from a fully office-based law firm to a fully remote law firm in less than 10 days. But even then, the first day that they flipped the switch and we went live as a remote firm, a lot of stuff crashed because we learned that we didn't have enough seats in order to dial in remotely. So, everybody had the first hurdles were, okay, how do we get this to work? But now what's happening is we're home, and everybody is using their home systems. Maybe the kids are around. Maybe the kids have access to the technology. So we're starting to see some issues with that. And then there's just a little more in terms of vulnerability, because by nature of working remotely, you can't just walk down the hallway to talk to somebody. We're really relying on texting or calls or Zoom or email. So it's a little in and out, and we're sort of having to trust the messages that we're receiving, and not all those messages are trustworthy.
Boy, that's a really good point, and I am terrified of my kids. My youngest, in high school and middle kid and in college, they know a lot more about technology, but they're also a lot less careful than I think they need to be. And so, one of the things we do is we keep our computers separate. Like, there's no kid on my work computer. But what sort of technology tools should we be thinking about as we ourselves and our employees and team members are working remotely?
Well, the first and the easiest is to make sure that we all have strong passwords on our tech, no matter what our tech is. And then the second one is to have a VPN in place.
So what's a VPN?
A VPN is it's a virtual private network, and I don't know if you remember, I don't know how many ages ago, I think it was it Senator Stevens from Alaska, and he was up giving some speech on the Senate floor, and he was yelling about how the internet is a series of tubes. And it was funny, because it's not, but a VPN kind of is. Because what the VPN does is it encodes your data. It sends it basically through a tube to the server, through a tunnel, through the server, which then decodes it and then sends it off on the merry way through the web. So you have a private connection, essentially, from your computer out into the
anything
interwebs.
Intercepted would be in a code that they couldn't receive or make sense of.
They shouldn't be able to intercept it, and if it was intercepted, it would be encrypted.
Right, got it. And so, talk to me about passwords. I mean, I keep hearing different things about passwords. Like, some people say, don't use a password even with funny symbols, but use a sentence or a phrase. Do you have any best advice about passwords?
Yeah, there's a lot of just conflicting advice. I tend to preach common sense. I think that kind of saves all of us. I was joking today that I'm the voice of reason, and so I'm always frustrated because nobody listens to me. But
Right.
yeah, so I mean, there are some practices that you shouldn't do with your passwords. We get those crazy autofill ones that are just impossible to remember.
Right.
You don't necessarily need to do that. But what you should do is a combination of, they say, about 3 words.
Okay.
And put letters or symbols in them. And there's no real rule of thumb, because you want something that's easy enough for you to remember, but is not truly hackable. What I've actually started doing is I'll pick a line of dialogue from a movie that I like, and then I'll change a couple of the letters to numbers or symbols,
Right.
Which makes it easy. But the other thing you can do too is then take all of your passwords, because we have so many devices and so many portals and so many passwords. You don't want to use the same password for everything, because if you're hacked once, they get into everything. So you can use any number of password, vault programs, to store all of your passwords.
And talk to me about that, because my passwords right now, I probably shouldn't say this, are on an Excel spreadsheet somewhere. And so what are some of the cool apps or programs out there for collecting and maintaining passwords?
Sure. And it's fine that your password all your passwords are on an Excel spreadsheet, so long as that Excel spreadsheet itself has a password.
Oh, gosh, no. I'm sorry.
Or isn't.
Blew it.
Yep.
Sorry.
Okay.
Or
I'll be
the other,
fixing that.
yeah. Don't print it and then just leave it on your desk. Or taped to the wall behind your credenza. In fact, that if you want to go old school tech with just having everything written down, you can do that. So there's a couple that vault systems. There's the LastPass is one. Another one is called 1Password, which is the number 1 and then password. I have an app on my phone which is called Keeper. So there's just a whole bunch of places that can vault and store the passwords. The problem is, just like I was saying with your Excel spreadsheet, if you forget your master password, you're out of luck.
Right.
You lost your
Boy, isn't that
passwords.
the truth.
The other thing you have to be careful of is these programs are keepers of secrets, which means that they are really good targets for hackers themselves. So if you pick a program, you just do your homework to make sure that you have one that's actually secure.
Very good advice. I don't know the right way to. We use Keeper Security here, and then what we did was we bought it for the whole company, so everybody here has their own logins, and then it's a master thing. But yeah, you're right. It's terrifying, and then you've got to update that password every now and then too, because that one password is the weakness to everything.
And I found that you do and you don't. There's some that say you must every 90 days update all your passwords, and then there's some, and I'm kind of liking this one because it's the path of least resistance, that say as long as you have a strong password, and as long as you are kind of checking in from time to time to make sure it's not compromised, and there are sites that you can check to see if you've been compromised, so as long as it's strong and as long as it's not compromised, you really don't need to keep updating every 90 days. The risk with all these updates is we get lazy and we just start reusing passwords, which means we're just unwittingly making ourselves more vulnerable.
What kind of a site? You mentioned a site that I could go to see if I'm weak. How does that work?
Yeah, it's and I can't even figure out how to pronounce it. So it's haveibeenpwned.com. So it's have I been owned, but instead of an O, it's a P.
Interesting.
And it's a really fun site to play around with because you can type in your password or your proposed password, and it will tell you if it's a strong password, if it's not a strong password, and it'll tell you how many times, if it has been used a lot, how commonly it's been compromised. And you can also type in your information, and they'll tell you if your email has been the subject of any data breaches.
Whoa. Great idea.
Yeah, definitely. So, anything else on passwords? Because I want to shift gears a little bit back to VPN.
Sure.
I'm pretty low tech kind of guy. So thanks. I know more about VPN now talking to you in just 2 seconds than I've ever known about a VPN. So anything else on passwords that you have to
Just
share?
like I said, just common sense. There are lists, and you can go out and find lists on the web of words not to put into your password. My dad has this brilliant idea that he does all of his passwords with the number 1, and then the first 3 letters of whatever it is, and then pass or password, and then the number 2. So his Facebook password is 1 face password 2. So no, that's easy. So your pets, commonly, your mom's name and just real common information about yourself, just too obvious. And you can just anything that you've probably thought to use or are using is probably going to be too obvious.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so we've sent all of our staff home, right? We're now working from these home computers on a home network. A lot of it's wireless nowadays. Is it safe to say that our home networks have a VPN, or this is something we need to really make sure that our employees take a step towards making sure has been done?
It's safe to say your home networks do not have a VPN.
Okay.
So if they're not dialing in through a VPN server, they're not dialing in securely, and so that can be intercepted. The data can be intercepted.
Okay. And there lies the problem.
Right. I mean, if I'm on my Wi-Fi at home, I can be hacked. That's what you're saying.
Right. And the other thing, too, is that your own information service provider, your ISP, can gather your information and can sell it.
That's not good.
So, yeah. So your VPN kind of protects you from having your personal ISP selling your information.
Very interesting.
Okay. So I think I have a high-level understanding as to what VPN is. Let's shift gears a little bit towards a solution there, a home-based solution, because I know our business has a VPN, right? So What could we expect our employees to do to basically bring a VPN into their home? Is that something that Comcast will offer, or some of these other internet providers?
I think as long as your office is set up so that they have to dial into your office through a VPN, then they are connecting via VPN. That's how we're connecting remotely at our office. We're dialing in on the VPN. You would want them to use that service only for whenever they're moving in remotely. And I'm assuming your employees, if they're using their own computer, or are they using tech that you've provided?
Typically their own computer, maybe a combination of both, but for the most part, their own.
So you'd want them to have to connect to the office through a VPN and just set it up so they can't dial in. Your system won't accept it unless they're dialing in through the VPN. And I'm using dial in probably completely wrong, but it sounds like really cool.
That's what we used to do.
It sounds really cool.
We just dated ourselves.
I know.
Totally.
So we, for example, have Workspace as a service through through Amazon. Desktop as a service is the solution that we use. So in essence, our desktops sit in the cloud, hosted by Amazon, and we just dial in through the internet to get there. I don't know I could do it right. I don't know if I'm using a VPN to actually get to the desktop that's being hosted by Amazon. Do you have any input on that? I know there's a lot of those types of services.
Probably not, but that's a little beyond my pay grade.
No problem. I wouldn't expect you to know that. That was a personal, selfish question based on the specific type of system that we have at our.
No, that's pretty cool.
Company. So.
Amazon is by far the world's largest cloud service company.
Is it?
Yeah, so you're in good hands.
Well, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah. So can I set up a VPN at home? How would I do that? Do you have any idea?
Well, I would assume, having not done on my own, is just you choose your VPN provider and they walk you through how to
They
set
figure
all that
out
up.
how to do it. Yeah, guys here have done it. I just don't know how. But the good news is if we log in remotely and we're using VPN, which we do here, we should be secure.
Right.
The other thing we do here is that we force all of the employees, for any computer they're going to use, even if they want to use their home computer, everybody here gets a computer, but if they want to use a different computer, then they have to have a software on there that basically makes them keep everything up to date. So if their Windows is out of date, then they could be hacked that way. If their Adobe Acrobat is out of date. That seems to be a really good idea, but at first there's a lot of resistance to that, because when they first installed this little tiny software program, it said everything was out of date. Like, oh my gosh, I can't use my computer for hours and hours. And then they're caught up.
Yeah, that sounds like an excellent practice, because the VPN secures your data, but it doesn't protect you from viruses. It's not an antivirus software.
Yeah.
So you need to have the rest of your systems in place. VPN would only be one piece of it. So if your antivirus isn't up to date, if your Windows isn't up to date, you're still vulnerable even though you have an encrypted system.
Because somebody could be, there's some sort of a software out there, like a keystroking software. Have you heard of this thing? How does that work? I think it has something to do, like it watches what you keystroke, and then it sends that out to the bad guys. So even if it can't figure out your password, it's watching you when you type it in, and then it knows your password. And then it can hack everything about it, and that can sit on your computer. Oh. Anyway, that's what our IT tech guy made us do, was have a little thing sitting on everybody's computer. If they're going to access our VPN, they got to have, there's just a rule. They've got to be using it. They'd be breaking the rules if they used, the computer at the library, if anybody ever goes back to a library again. Right? Or wherever else.
Yeah,
right.
So I've got an idea. We're just about 20 minutes in to our first session here with Karan. And I want to have a lot of fun in our second session.
Let's do it.
Not that we're not having a lot of fun now, but I'm going to just throw one more request out to Karan and say, what else from a security perspective would you suggest? We've talked about passwords, we've talked about VPNs, we've talked about company issued equipment and some software that should always be installed in personal use or owned equipment, so on and so forth. what are some of the other best practices as it relates to us working remotely at this point in time that you would suggest? And then in our second session, we're going to talk about what phishing is and what's the other one? Smishing.
What is that?
I don't even.
It's smishing, not schmishing.
Okay, sorry.
It's not like a schmear.
Yeah, thank
if
you.
only.
Yes, thank you. Good. And even some examples of things that have happened, I think would just be really fun to talk about.
I can't wait.
Okay, yeah. So take us out with some other best practices.
Really just sort of training and making sure that your employees know and that you know what you need to do to keep yourself safe. And so that your employees understand why it's a bad idea to have your password be 1fluffy2, or your address, or one face password 2. A lot of it is just really education and training and just kind of being smart about your use of your technology.
Training is the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe some process or some procedures that are written potentially as well. I mean, as business owners, I'm thinking we should probably put some stuff in order so that we can actually give that information to our employees and go from there. I know one thing, our tech guy is actually doing home audits right now, making sure that they've got equipment that's, 2 screens for productivity, making sure that, some of these checks and balances are in place. So, I just throw that in. And
Who is that guy? My guy doesn't even show up at my office.
well, he's
I might
employed
need to
by
talk to
us.
you. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, his name's Luke. He's a great guy. I can introduce you to him.
Will he
But,
come
but he's
over?
ours. He's our guy.
Stay tuned for
Yes.
Luke podcast
Yes,
next.
Exactly. We'll bring Luke in.
All right. Karen, thank you so much.
No, thank you. It's my pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, Karen.
Thank you for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed the information we shared.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to share it with someone else. And join us next time.
If you want to meet with a member of the team, please contact us at info@expertnetworkteam.com. That's info@expertnetworkteam.com.
If you have special topics you'd like to hear about, please reach out to us and let us know at the same email address. Again, that's info@expertnetworkteam.com. Thank you for joining us and have a great day. Thank you for listening to this podcast. We want to remind you that listening to this podcast does not establish a client-professional relationship with any of the firms represented, nor does it constitute legal, investment, or accounting advice, and the views are those of the professionals only.
Investment advisory services may be provided through A&I Financial Services, and securities may be provided through Genios Wealth Management.